everyone. I'm Maggie Williams. I'm the director of the Institute of Politics. Welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum in the Institute of Politics. Our mission here is to inspire students toward careers in politics and public service, but we have some laughs along the way. Over the years, this forum has hosted Chevy Chase, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, Al Franken, and I hope you will enjoy this discussion as much as you have enjoyed the others. Leading our conversation tonight is a young woman who knows a thing or two about humor, named this past January as the first African-American woman president of a 138-year-old Harvard Lampoon, is Alexis Wilkinson. She started her writing career at age 7 when she began her memoir entitled, "I'm the Only One Who Knows About Anything." Alexis is a senior living in Leverett House and studies economics when she isn't writing comedy. She was an IOP director's intern and hails from the state of Wisconsin. Please welcome Alexis Wilkinson.
Great, thank you so much, Maggie. I was talking to her before and said it needed to be like obituary perfect, and that was, I could die now. I think that's a good one. I think she did a great job. So basically we're here tonight to discuss the role of politics and humor, and I think what's becoming increasingly more apparent, the role of humor in politics. From Tina Fey's memorable impression of Sarah Palin during SNL during the 2008 election, that some people would really argue influenced the way the entire country saw her as a candidate, to the great success of satirical news shows like The Daily Show and The Colbert Report, and Last Week Tonight, politics and humor are obviously more bound together than ever. So with that in mind, our very talented and funny guests tonight are Lizz Winstead. Lizz is the co-creator of The Daily Show. She is also a producer, stand-up comedian, and women's rights activist. Specifically, she has campaigned tirelessly and hilariously for contraceptive access and abortion rights, founding the movement Lady Parts Justice, which uses humor and outrage to promote bodily autonomy. She has appeared on Comedy Central, HBO, CNN, MSNBC, and PBS. Lizz also authored the book Lizz Free or Die about her life and career. Please welcome Lizz Winstead. And now on to Seth. Seth Rogen is an actor, Emmy-nominated writer, comedian, filmmaker, and Canadian. He's appeared in such blockbusters as The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, and Funny People. He and his comedic partner, Evan Goldberg, who's also here tonight and will join us for the Q&A portion, is also a Canadian and co-wrote Pineapple Express, Superbad, This Is the End, and their most recent feature that will be in theaters Christmas Day, The Interview, starring Seth and James Franco. Seth has also been an ardent supporter of marijuana legalization, gay rights, and Alzheimer's awareness, testifying to Congress about the importance of research and his program, Hilarity for Charity, earlier this year. Please give it up for Seth Rogen. Okay, basically how this is gonna work is I'm gonna ask them a couple kind of open-ended questions. We'll watch a couple video clips, and then we'll move on to the Q&A where Evan will join us. So just to give you kind of a rundown about how this is gonna go. So I'm gonna start with Lizz. So Lizz, you started as a stand-up comedian and quickly came to write and perform for a variety of shows before teaming with Madeline Smithberg to create The Daily Show, which is now one of the most popular shows on TV, and I think some 80% of millennials watch The Daily Show. That's a crazy percentage. So what was can you describe how you came to create the show and what your original vision was for the show?
Oh boy. Well, the short of it was, it was a long path. I thought I would be a stand-up forever. I just thought I would do stand-up and it would be fine. And I was on the road and making a living doing stand-up, and I was fine at it. But I was kind of a hack, really. Just kind of dopey jokes like, Great Danes should have to wear underwear in public. You know, just stupid like, jokes. They're like dumb.
That's great.
Thank you. But, you know, so really, it's so embarrassing to say, but it's sort of true. I had this, I don't know another word for it, so I will just say epiphany. And what happened was I was living in New York in 1991, and a friend of mine set me up on a blind date, which, do you know what that is? It was before Tinder.
It's like Tinder, though.
It's kind of like Tinder.
Yeah, it's like
Exactly
that.
like
But
so-
imagine it was a human.
Yeah. So I went on the date, and the guy shows up at my house, and he's wearing a Yankees hat and a Yankees jacket, and I'm already kind of bummed out for a couple reasons. One, I'm from Minnesota, and so I'm a Twins fan, and two, I have a theory about guys who wear double sports gear that they won't go down on you. It's a theory that it's born to play out, actually. And then he said to me, I wanted to see the movie La Dolce Vita. Do you know this film? Amazing film. I'd never seen it on a big screen. It's an old Italian movie. And he said, well, isn't that in black and white? As a negative. And I thought, oh, I should just end the date, but I'm from Minnesota, so I'm like, oh, I'll just continue with my own personal pain. And we went to the movie, and he fell asleep through the movie, and then I hated him so much for falling asleep during the movie that I took my greasy popcorn hand and I smeared it on his Yankees jacket and felt unbelievable glee. And then horrible guilt. So when he woke up, I could have ended the date, and I said, no, let's go have a drink. We get to the bar, and it's the night of the first Gulf War. And the TV is on, and you guys, a lot of you weren't even born, but it was just when there was just CNN. And there was the TV on, and all of a sudden, CNN had like graphics and a theme song and like hot people talking about war. And I thought to myself, with no, political whatever, I was like, are they reporting on a war or trying to sell me a war? And it felt really weird. And right when I thought that, my date goes, this is awesome. And I was like, we are screwed as a nation. And from that point forward, I kind of started looking at the world through a different lens and through I was like reading more stuff and talking more about the media and stuff like that. And then I did a couple of one-woman shows, and then Comedy Central said, hey, do you want to create a show that's on every day about the news? And I said, I do, but the one thing that I think is key is that we don't just make fun of the news makers, we actually use the news as a character. Like, we actually look at the way they do the news, and we actually make fun of that, because that is part of it. The manipulation is part of it. So I'm sorry, that was really long, but that's how.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So today, a lot of your work involves sort of more directly merging politics and humor, particularly on the topic of bodily autonomy for women. So let's go to a clip from your organization, Lady Parts Justice, called The State of the Uterus. Probably up there, too.
Oh, there's a screen.
Yeah.
It's up there. It's also there.
Madam Fallopian Tube, Madam Other Fallopian Tube, Lady Parts Justice Leaguers, members of Congress, and all the other uninvited guests in my chamber. The state of our uterus is strong. The end of last year left us unstable. I know that. When the government shut down, there was panic. With no politician in place telling it what to do, our vaginas ran amok. It was vaginarchy, but that was then. I'm here tonight to assure the uteri of America that the government is back to work, and that Republicans and Republicans alike are tirelessly fighting so the uteri of America will have the same rights as the uteri of Saudi Arabia. And the passage of 250 abortion laws in America in 2013 alone is a pretty good start.
All right. Thank you. So Liz, Lady Parts Justice is obviously dealing with a very sort of contentious and divisive issue. And just recently, legislation has been passed in several states mandating the closures of family planning clinics like Planned Parenthood, leaving a lot of women without options. So what made you want to be involved in this fight, and why do you think humor is the best way to communicate this message?
Well, I think leaving women without options is always bad. And so I was like, and also I just realized people weren't aware of what was happening. You know, the thing that's really interesting is Planned Parenthood's a really strong brand. And so when you're living your life and you're really busy, you don't even understand what the assault is. And also, I just feel like when I hear people talk about this issue that are anti-choice, or they set a set of circumstances that aren't true. One is that there was some age of abstinence that we need to get back to. There was never in the history of forever people not having sex. People have sex, and so they do, and then the mistakes happen and whatever. So why not have birth control, and why not make sure that all access is given? And so why not talk about it in ways that are fun and interesting, and also get men involved, because it turns out women can't get pregnant by themselves.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's true. So I just feel like if women can't control, everything about their destiny, their economic destiny, whether or not they want to have kids, they're never going to really be a part of the power structure, which I would like to see more women part of the decision-making situation, including starting with their own bodies.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to Seth.
Oh, man. Dumb yourselves down a bit.
So obviously you're most known for, outrageous blockbuster comedies and liking to smoke cannabis. But I know you also care very deeply about Alzheimer's research and creating awareness for that.
Yeah.
And can you explain how you came to be involved in that conversation and what it was like to testify to Congress about it earlier this year?
My mother-in-law was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's when she was in her early 50s, and I had just started dating my wife around that time, and I really knew nothing about it, honestly. I think I knew how it was like portrayed in movies and stuff like that, and I very quickly got like a crash course in kind of all things Alzheimer's, and one of like the most interesting things and startling things was like that I didn't know was that there's literally no treatment at all. There's nothing you can do. And then you start to look into how much funding it gets from the government and stuff like that, and it's like ridiculously underfunded in comparison to things that kill much less people and have many forms of treatment. And so then you look around and you're just like, no one's doing anything. And as far as like, diseases that are cool to talk about, it's like below polio, It's like just not hip in any capacity. Because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of shame associated with it. I feel like there's a weird microphone thing happening, and I apologize. But maybe if I lower this a little bit or something. I don't know what it is. But it's the whole thing's fucked. But anyway, and what was almost very startling was how quickly I was able to become like the most well-known advocate for the disease, because there was no competition. Like it was really mine to take. And as I got older, you realize that like, not everyone, but I realized like, oh, I'm a famous person, and like a lot of people pay attention to what I say, and I generally just say stupid shit, and maybe every once in a while I can try to maybe deflect that spotlight onto something that could use some illumination, I guess. And I wondered, like, how do I do that? Like, I don't know anything, I'm not very educated. So it was a struggle for a long time, honestly, morally. And then very organically, this thing came into my life where I could just talk about it in a very personal way. I didn't have to memorize any facts or statistics or anything like that. I could just speak from my own experiences, and all of a sudden I was raising awareness, and it was not something people were doing, and they invited me to go to the Congress and talk about it, which was kind of just disheartening in a way, I guess. Like, they have these panels that are set up so they can hear people's personal pleas on issues, and no one shows up to them, and like that's like the norm. Is like there's 17 people on this panel and 2 people were there. And then when I started to kind of act like, why the fuck are there only 2 people there? Everyone's like, oh, silly, like, that's what happens. They don't show up to these things. I'm like, oh, great. Sounds like a great job where like you're defended in the choice to not show up to it. And in a way that was disconcerting, but at the same time, you know, people hate the government, and that's why. Like, it seems inefficient, and like people are being paid to do shit that they're not doing, and I had a front row seat to that. And but for a brief moment, I made Alzheimer's something that went like viral, I guess. Like the speech got, you know, a lot of views on YouTube. I think it was C-SPAN's like second most watched video after Obama's inauguration. And again, not a lot of competition in that category. But in a way, it showed me like, oh, I can, even if it's for a brief moment, shed some light on something. And that's like a microscopic step towards actually affecting some relevant change, I guess, you know?
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome, thank you. Okay, the next thing I want to ask you about is your new movie, The Interview, in which you and James Franco are hired by the CIA to kill North Korea's Kim Jong-un. So let's watch the trailer for that.
Hello, who this?
This is the Secretary of Communication for North Korea. Our Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un is interested in doing an interview with Dave Skylark.
Oh my God.
We will meet 50 kilometers west of Dangdong, northeastern China.
Did you just say China? And did you just say dong?
3 weeks from tonight, I will be traveling to Pyongyang, North Korea, to interview President Kim Jong-un.
Mr. Rappaport, I'm Agent Lacey with Central Intelligence. You two are going to be in a room alone with Kim, and the CIA would love it if you could take him out. Take him out.
For coffee? Dinner. For kimchi?
No, take him out.
You want us to kill the leader of North Korea?
Yes.
Hello, North Korea!
I've watched every episode of your show in preparation for this interview. I particularly enjoyed the Miley Cyrus camel toe episode.
Wow.
Very deep.
Very deep. Yeah, she has quite a hearty moose knuckle.
Gentlemen, you are entering into the most dangerous country on Earth. Please remember, Kim Jong-un is a master manipulator.
I have a gift for you.
Oh, this dog is killing me with cuteness.
He's a crazy cute.
I wish we had an escape plan.
Why don't we go to Japan?
Well, because it's across the Sea of Japan.
Why don't we swim?
Can't swim that.
Oh, I'm a good swimmer.
It's really, really far.
People have done it.
Nope.
Yep, Michael Phelps did it.
That's not true.
Nice tank! Is that real?
It was a gift to my grandfather from Stalin.
In my country, it's pronounced Stallone. You have a sound system in here?
Oh, no. Don't touch.
Katy Perry?
I've never heard this before in my life.
I love Katy Perry.
Really?
As you shoot across the sky. I spent a lot of time with Kim, and I think he's not a bad guy.
You cannot pull out of this. I'm pulling out. You're way too deep to pull out. I'm pulling out. No, you're not. You're leaving it in.
I've been pulling out for years, son.
All right. Okay, so somewhat unsurprisingly, the actual North Korea has flipped its shit. When the movie was first announced, they threatened, I think the phrasing was merciless retaliation, something like that. And now obviously your movie isn't the first to mock a real place, the most notable example being Borat in Kazakhstan, and they weren't too happy about that either. But I don't think they have nukes. So how did this idea for the movie come about, and how did you think that North Korea would actually respond?
Maybe. The idea came about from, we would just, it was kind of like anecdotal, conversational, like we'd be like, oh, you know, like Mike Wallace interviews Osama bin Laden, like he's in a room, like journalists are in a position to be in a room with very elusive, dangerous people, hypothetically. And I'm not saying they should kill them, but were they so inclined, they would be in a good position to do that. And that became kind of something that we would just talk about, you know. And then meanwhile, we were just very fascinated with North Korea, as a lot of people are. It's just kind of a bizarre place, and the more you read about it, the more bizarre it is, and the more mysterious it is, and kind of the deeper you dig, the deeper the mystery goes, just as to like, what the fuck is going on over there? And so eventually we kind of just combined the ideas and thought like, oh, we can make a movie about a journalist who gets an interview with, you know, Kim Jong-un and then is asked to kill him, basically. And as we did more and more, you know, looking into North Korea and learning more and more about it, we started to see that like kind of crazy rhetoric is the name of their game. And when they weren't, you know, at the opening scene of the movie literally kind of makes fun of that idea. And so when they ultimately came out with this, you know, rhetoric, it wasn't ultimately that surprising, because it again just kind of confirmed the theory of the movie to some degree. Yeah.
I mean, are you like at all fearful that they like actually do something?
No, not really. No, I mean, I would hope they have better
That's a
things
challenge.
to do. Yeah, no, I don't take that as a challenge. I mean, I would hope they have better things to do than.
Is this streaming in North Korea tonight?
Yeah, exactly, live there. I don't think the movie's being released in North Korea, though. I expect low box office revenue there.
Okay, so the next topic I kind of want to talk about with you both is sort of, there's been a lot of talk lately about sort of gender and comedy and gender dynamics and feminism, and that's sort of a thing that people are really starting to look at pop culture and humor in particular, and hold people sort of, you know, for better or for worse, accountable for things that are being said. So Liz, the question I have for you is, you've obviously worked in comedy a really long time and been in a lot of writers' rooms, and, you know, late night TV and political satire shows, and there seems to be, particularly for that genre, like a real dearth of women. I know when Colbert is leaving and Larry Wilmore is taking his spot, I was like, the black self in me was really happy, but the woman self was not as happy. And so I want to know, what do you think can be done to sort of correct that?
Well, since I have so much power, I think it's made great strides. I think that from where we were and then where we're going, I think that, you know, there was an old guard for a really long time, and the old guard's retiring. And I think that when you look at when new young showrunners are taking over, they have come up the ranks with women and with people of color, and those people are now along for the ride. I think the threatening part is not there, or the predisposition that women aren't funny isn't there either. So I feel really good about that. You go to any comedy show now and you'll see tons of women and people of color, and it's really cool. You know, I think that, you know, it's always amazing to me. I look at late night in two different realms. I look at Colbert and Jon Stewart and Bill Maher as different animals than a general entertainment Letterman kind of show. I think that it's generally, when I launched The Daily Show, I got 150 writing submissions, 2 from women. And those women didn't have the chops to do that show at that time. And that's changed exponentially, especially once there's a product that you can watch and then you know what kind of packet to write for it, it's very different. But if you think about it, if you're going into the world of TV writing or film writing or whatever, there's few jobs for big, nerdy, funny political junkies who also have historical working knowledge of life and of politics, and who can say, oh my God, Nixon said that, Reagan said that, there's this weird FDR radio clip, and those people exist and work on those shows. And so you have to be this combination person, and then you have to have the tone of the show. On top of having all of that knowledge, you have to have the tone of the show, because you're not writing monologue jokes. You're examining the landscape of the media and politics. And so it doesn't, a lot of people just go, there's more sitcoms than shows like that. So I think that, you know, it's hard to tell. And also, you know, if you look at the ratings on The Daily Show or Colbert, they're very different than Modern Family, or cable news. So I think that people interested in doing those things are not as great, and then people of color doing those things are not as great, and then women doing those things are not as great, and then people doing them well is not as great as that. And so it's really hard. The pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller when you actually assess what you need to make those shows great every single night.
Thanks.
Which has nothing to do with anybody, it just has to do with the pool of people.
Right. Okay, so Seth.
Yes.
You're all right.
All right.
You're known for these sort of bromantic comedies where usually a bunch of dudes, they try to do a thing, it's probably a pretty stupid thing.
Yeah.
They somehow get out of it, usually by being pretty stupid to get out of it.
Yep.
But you took to Twitter to defend the movie Neighbors, which you starred in besides Zac Efron, when the Washington Post and Hornaday tried to link movies like that to the horrific Santa Barbara murders, saying the killing spree was, quote, a sad reflection of the sexist stories we so often see on screen, to which you tweeted, quote, how dare you imply that me getting girls in movies caused a lunatic to go on a rampage? In fact, many people pointed out that in Neighbors, your character's wife, in the face of the sort of typical role of women in these movies who might be like the logical one who's killing all the fun, she's actually sort of in on all the action and is crucial to the plot.
Yeah.
So all of that is just to say, do you think about sort of the gender dynamics in filmmaking, and how much of that do you think should go into what stories you want to tell?
I can say as we've gotten older, we've thought about it more. When we were in our early 20s making Superbad, I mean, it was so from the perspective of the guys who were kind of fearful yet reverential of women that it was very much from that perspective. And so the roles of the women in that movie, for example, it was very clear what they should be, But as we've gotten older, yes, with Neighbors specifically, we put a lot of thought into how do we allow Rose Byrne to be as important to the comedy and the story, and how do we not make the story about a couple who's in conflict, but make like a comedy team out of a husband and wife who really get along with each other and like each other. And I think that's why I think the article she wrote actually had some good points in it, and I probably overshadowed that with my rage because on that movie specifically, I think I was just hurt because that movie specifically is one that we put a lot of thought into specifically not doing that. And I think a lot of people responded very well to that and seemed to understand that that was a key element of that movie. And, being told that you are in any way responsible for a mass murder just sucks. And so that, I think, is also where I was coming from to some degree. But yeah, I mean, as we've gotten older and smarter, I guess, we realized that I think just the nature of how movies are structured themselves lends itself towards sexism, honestly. Just the traditional structure of a movie that is romantic, the structure that has worked for 100 years, which is why people keep doing it, is very much the structure that a lot of movies follow, which do not paint women in the most independent, best plot-driving, comedy-driving light. And once we were like, let's not do that, it was interesting how many conventions we had to unravel, and that's when we started to realize, like, holy shit, like, a lot of just the standard movie mechanics are trying to usher this into a shitty role, and we had to very actively fight against that, and I hope as we continue making movies, we do it more and more, because it's something that, again, we're trying to be more and more aware of.
And I also think, too, the more you get women in writers' rooms and women as creators, and in life in general, women in positions of life where they're making decisions and you see women in all these different roles, then the roles of those women will also be reflected in film. And I think that's the problem, is that if you have a life where you don't have women all over it, then you don't create movies from the perspective of a woman. You don't even give, women, how many women are running studios? How many women are, doing that? Because it's a fallacy that perpetuates still, where people say, oh, there's women's comedies, and then there's men's comedies. And I think that movies like Bridesmaids and stuff, have started breaking that mold. But unless we stop saying things like that and start having women in all of these positions in life with which we can write about experiential things that women drive it, we'll be stuck in that same formula.
Yeah.
Okay. Sort of on that same note, how do you guys feel about, I mean, I don't know if you remember the sort of like Cancel Colbert campaign that happened like not too long ago about sort of like this joke he made about the Redskins. And I think in general, do you feel like comedians sort of should have license to, push the boundaries or whatever, maybe offend people and they don't need to apologize, or like because those, things that they're saying like could reverberate, like that they have sort of a social responsibility when it comes to joke telling?
I think you have to, we were talking about it. I think you have to be able to defend your own material on an intellectual and moral level. I don't think, I would never make a joke that I think would get a laugh that has a political view that I don't personally believe in, because I might get asked about that one day and I don't want to look stupid. So it's like, I do think that a lot of people who try to be edgy or political, who feel as though they're unfairly targeted by the political correctness crowd, forget that they have to be funny as well as edgy and political. And I think that if you really look at the people who complain about that and the people who don't, very few of the people who are complaining about it are hilarious, and most of the people who are truly hilarious, who are incredibly edgy, never complain about it at all. I mean, I think every time you make a joke that in your head is like slightly, I don't even know if controversial, like there's almost like a group of people that have to react negatively to some jokes in order for the jokes to be valid, and you just know that group of stupid people is going to say that thing, and that's almost the point that the joke is making, is that there's a group of people who think this thing that you think is not necessarily what they should be thinking, and they will say their thing. And sometimes you'll say something, though, that offends more than just those people by accident. And I do think that I do see comedians apologizing sometimes, and I've never done something that I felt like I've had to apologize for, but I have seen people make jokes where I was like, yeah, they should maybe apologize for that. I don't think that's like a loss or like it's some admission. It's an admission that they made a joke that maybe went too far. And I think, we screen our movies a lot, and in a lot of early screenings of our movies, there are jokes that go too far and that are probably in bad taste. And by the time they reach mass consumption, we've filtered those out. We maybe were like, we didn't even realize it, and then someone will say something, or just the way it'll play in the room, we're like, oh, whoa, we were wrong about that. And we try to be sensitive towards that personally. But I personally don't feel like, there's some political correct squad that is trying to prevent me from doing my job in the best way that I can. If anything, I'm shocked with what I'm able to get away with, generally speaking.
Yeah. And I always adhere to I would never tell anybody not to say anything. And we were talking about this earlier, and I say it often, is you must understand, though, that when you say something, that the second it passes your lips, that everybody else gets to interpret it however they interpret it. So with that, it's always mindful and not a bad idea to think about what your intention is, be able to defend it, know that there's going to be haters no matter what, know that there's people that are going to misconstrue and maybe not have the information you have. I mean, I'll tell you, I put a tweet out there about 1.5 years ago that was like a horror show for me. And what it was it was during the time when the Republicans were having those hearings about the IRS and saying that Obama had only targeted Republicans in the IRS scandal, right? And then it was also at a time when the religious right had the habit of blaming storms on gays and lesbians behavior, right? So it was the
There's no proof that doesn't.
Right.
You can either confirm or deny that.
San Francisco's really rainy.
So, having that knowledge in my purview, the Oklahoma tornado was coming down the pike. It hadn't landed yet, but I said, I wonder if the Oklahoma tornado was only going to target Republicans. So I tweet it about an hour before the tornado hits. I go have a drink. I come back to my Twitter feed, and it is hit. There are children who have died.
Oh, no.
And I have a tweet that's out there that says that, with people shitting on me, like relentless. I still get it. Like anytime I'll criticize somebody, you're the tornado person, I wish people were dead. And so I got it, I saw it, I realized people don't know how many people actually do that storm comparison. They don't know the targeted thing. It wasn't worth me to defend it because it was just too much of a thing. So I took it down and I said, I tweeted this, let me have it. Like, I get where this thing exploded into another thing. And then I moved on with my life. Of course, people don't let it go. But that's one of those things where I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, in the wrong set of, that was just fucked up. And so I took it down. But there's also been tweets that I've put out there where I've gotten the same amount of vitriol that I've totally been like, I will double down on that.
Yeah.
I will not, I'm sorry, not every time someone's offended doesn't mean that I am not thoroughly thrilled to offend them because I think they're wieners. Or that I just believe that the statement was right and made a larger point or whatever. So I think that you just have to take it all in because you're putting it out there. And sometimes you never know where you're at comedically unless you do push that envelope and do hit a barrier and do say, wow, that was weird.
That was too much.
Yeah. So, I just say you got to own it when people come down and you take lumps like everybody else and just, feel good about knowing you can defend it and take the hits if you need to take the hits, I guess.
All right, thank you. Okay, so before we go to audience questions, I have a few non-serious rapid fire questions. So, lightning round, whatever comes first to mind, we're gonna knock these out.
Uh-oh.
So Liz, do you think Hillary Clinton is more of a Samantha or a Charlotte from Sex and the City? This is a serious question. I've been thinking about this a lot and I can't decide. And they're opposite characters.
I think do I have to pick one of those?
You think of Miranda?
What?
She's definitely, please, you have the floor.
What if I said I didn't watch Sex and the City and so I'm stumped by your question?
Okay, all right, well,
That'd make you
Seth,
cool
do you
as
have
shit.
do you have an opinion on that? Do you know?
I think she's a Mr. Big.
That's a good answer. Yeah,
I'm going with that.
Yeah, there you go.
Amazing. This is Mr. Big.
I'm tearing down gender walls.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm wrecking your game. All right.
I should have asked you beforehand if you wanted.
No, that's okay. I know the deal. It's just a lot of hair and a lot of sadness.
Shoes and hair,
Shoes and sex.
Drinks and
things that I wish my life was.
So Seth, do you know the Pledge of Allegiance?
No. I pledge allegiance to a flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God. That's the controversial part. And then I don't know the rest.
You almost got the whole.
That was pretty good.
That's only from movies and shit.
All right, awesome. Okay, Liz.
I'll do better.
All right, no, you got this. Obama, worst good president or best bad president?
You know who he is.
All the hair and the drinking
He's more
and
of a
the sex.
Samantha? Wait, that's not correct. Worst best president, best worst president? I would say best black president.
By that logic, he's also the worst black president.
I take that back. You know what? I don't know. I always feel like he's a president who has given us as much humor as he has stuff. He gave us healthcare, so you know what? He gets a pass from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So Seth, if marijuana were legal in all 50 states, which state do you think would have the best weed?
That's actually a good question.
Depends where they frack.
fracking helps. I don't know. Probably somewhere where, like, I would imagine, like, where there's, like, a strong farming botany community, maybe Vermont or something like that. Somewhere of the leaf.
Where there's rich soil.
Yeah, they have a lot of, I picture a lot of pastures, green pastures and stuff like that. Yeah, and you go with Vermont.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Ben and Jerry, good ice cream.
It's all about the food. Okay, Liz, this is a two-part question. Is it better to have loved and lost than to never love at all? And which state do you think has the worst abortion laws?
Is it better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all? Yes. Because vibrators are expensive. True facts. And the worst abortion laws, believe it or not, it's hard. Fun fact, Oregon is the only state that has not curbed any abortion access since Roe v. Wade. The only state. So I guess you'd think it might be Texas,
Okay.
but you'd be wrong.
Whoa, curveball.
Because it might be Louisiana, and it might be North Carolina, or it might be Mississippi. I think any place with one clinic, of which there are 5 states that only have one clinic that have access. So I would say the Southeast region and Ohio could be thrown in there. I don't know. I'm confused. How about stay right here? You have good ones. Right here.
The state is great.
Yeah.
You can't even rent Dirty Dancing in Texas, I've heard.
No, you can't sell sex toys in Texas.
Wow.
What?
I know. We wanted to go down there and do a vibrator buyback program. Stand on a flatbed, no questions asked, just put it in the bucket, fork out the money.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Seth, this is the last question.
Did you just thank me for that?
I did. I did. It's good information for me. Texas. Who knew? So Seth.
Yeah.
So pick one. 2 options here.
Okay.
Option A: James Franco still hits on underage girls on Instagram, or option B: James Franco has now moved on to Tumblr.
I'll go with Tumblr. I don't get Tumblr, but yeah, it seems, any evolution is a good one.
All right. Okay, so now we're gonna start the audience Q&A portion. There are microphones 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 3 rules to this Q&A. 1, you need to introduce yourself. Oh, and Evan is going to join us. This is Seth's comedic partner.
He's my writing and directing partner.
Yeah.
Hello.
Directing, writing. Oh my God. They co-wrote the interview together. So rules are, you have to introduce yourself.
I don't know if I'm
And if you want to say your affiliation with the college or otherwise, go ahead. You need to keep it short, and it needs to end in a question mark. So no semicolon bullshit. Just keep it to question. Okay.
Dot.
Yeah, none of that. No ellipse. None of that. Okay, so let's start over here.
Hi, my name is Alex Jurgen. I'm a student in the joint program between the business school and the Kennedy School. I'm also the co-president of the Business School Republicans.
Nice.
My question tonight is: are there any candidates that you ever want to win, even if you disagree with them, just because they'll provide you with good material?
No, I'll always put social issues above my own personal comedic well-being, personally.
I know.
It's hard sometimes. Yeah.
I do wince a little bit when they lose.
I might have voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger just as a laugh.
But I voted against people, and then, or when Michelle Bachmann decided she was resigning, I'm from Minnesota, and I was like, oh, I can't do this accent anymore. But so I think no, I don't. No.
It's tempting, though.
I will lightly lament Rob Ford's moving on.
Oh.
Yeah, in Canada, it's true.
That was a wild thing to watch.
It was, it helped us get a movie made. So we had a movie about a politician who's like a crazy drug addict who goes off the rails and no one wanted to make it, and then Rob Ford went fucking nuts, and And all of a sudden there was like a hunger for a script about a politician that goes off the rails. And we're like, we got one. And now Vince Vaughn is attached to being it. We might make it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, right here.
Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm a Harvard alum. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on Dennis Rodman as a diplomat for the United States. And secondly, most importantly, if the leader of North Korea were to give you an invitation to screen your movie in North Korea with the assurance that you would return back alive in one piece, would you go to North Korea to screen the film?
There was some like magical, let's pretend magic exists for a second, which it might, but if there was like a magical spell they could put on us and it was like, you 100% will be okay, I would do it, yeah, just to see the reaction in person. I'm always curious to see how the movie plays. And
we did all that research and we'll never get to go there.
yeah, exactly, yeah, so it would be, I would do that, again, if magic existed. And what was the first part? Dennis Rodman. Well, what's funny is we wrote the movie before that happened. Kim Jong-il was actually the original star of the movie, and then he died, and we recast him. But in the movie, I mean, as you see from the trailer, it's about an idiot who goes to North Korea and is kind of seduced by their leader and ultimately grows to like him. And we were like, is this just really far-fetched? And then it fucking happened. And in a way, we were like, at first it was a little irksome, but then we were like, it adds credibility to the whole thing. Like, it makes what could be a very far-fetched story actually seem very plausible. And it kind of validated the whole thing and kind of grounded it in reality even more than it was. Yeah.
All right, up there.
Hi. Oh.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a sophomore at the college. I think satire tends to be critical as opposed to constructive, and also sometimes just like silly. But and I don't think it's satire's role to be constructive, nor is it very well suited to that role. But I'm wondering how in satire we avoid being the jerk in the group project who only ever shoots people's ideas down and tells them how they won't work. So how do we avoid that in satire?
I got to disagree with you on this one. I think that satire is constructive.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, people will not enjoy it and it will go away. That person will no longer be viewed as someone you want to receive the satire from because they're just preaching to you. They're not saying anything and it's just mean-spirited. If you're not doing something, it's just cruel. But if you're trying to make, like, The Daily Show makes every little joke is a little difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and although they're attacking things that are stupid, by doing that, they're either directly or indirectly bolstering things that are not stupid. And there is it's an action-reaction reality. I think comedically, it's just a lot harder it's a lot easier comedically to be critical of something. If you see comedy, that's just what comedians do. They complain about stuff. They point out.
It's based in the negative. Comedy's very essence is negative.
It is 100% rooted in negativity. Yeah. And that just is what comedy is. But I think what Evan's saying is right, is ultimately by rejecting a negative, you are bolstering a pot. Like Dr. Strangelove, yes, there's no moment where they're like, nuclear bombs are bad and no nuclear bombs are good. That's kind of the implication, I would imagine, and I think that's more what we try to do.
Yeah, like taking Louis C.K. as an example. Like, that guy is saying a lot of, I think, very valuable stuff, and I think my life is better from me listening to his comedy because he's complaining a lot about stuff in life, but he's teaching me about what it is to be a dad raising 2 kids. I don't have kids, I will one day, and I'm seeing it through his lens and seeing the small things he thinks are funny or wrong or right. I feel like I learn a lot from satire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I feel like also being able to observe what you want to expose means that you do a lot of research on it and you get to a lot of nuance. The Colbert character is very nuanced. It's a thought process, and I think that it gives people a little bit of an insight into things. So yeah, I'm sorry, we all disagree with you.
But good question.
Maybe that was my plan all along.
Yeah. But can I just ask you one thing? Often when people ask a question like that, they have something specific they're thinking about. Is there something specific that you are thinking about when you ask that? A specific piece of comedy or a piece of satire that you thought was all of those things?
Not necessarily. I guess, like especially thinking about the Daily Show and stuff. There are certainly, I think there's certainly that satire where when you're pointing out when Jon Stewart makes fun of CNN and the giant touch screens and like playing with it's kind of obvious. I think what the sort of alternative to that is. But I think sometimes there's not an obvious alternative. When we're saying, well, that's a stupid idea, and I don't have any specific examples.
Well, I think okay, so. I'll close this out really quick so other people can ask, but part of the reason that I have started this new medium and gone into this new medium is that I agree with you. It is not satire's role to solve problems. It's satire's role to just be funny and expose problems. But if you're somebody who loves satire and then says, you want to know what? I want to be able to throw that shit out into the world and then have some ways and places where people can go and try to fix it themselves. That's what I want to do, but that wasn't the role of having a TV show and stuff like that, and I knew that, so like I'm happy that exists because then it's like you can do it that way. So
I guess I'm actually
we can't go any farther. We have to let other people talk. Yeah. But I'll talk to you after. Okay. Okay, over there.
Hi, my name is Tess, and I'm currently a freshman here at the college. I'm both a staff writer for the U.S. section of the Harvard Political Review, and I'm also a correspondent for Harvard's internet comedy group on Harvard Time. Now, my question is, since now I'm going to be figuring out what my future career plans are, what do you recommend I go into, keeping in mind that my parents will be watching this online?
Comedy or politics?
Or a combination of the two.
I mean, do you want to laugh or be serious all day?
Yeah, it's really fun to work in comedy, and
you can do both.
And
get a job at the Daily Show.
Yeah, and you can inject a lot of your political beliefs into that.
Or you can become the funniest politician there ever was.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure it's a
humor.
lot. Yeah, I bet it's easier to inject politics into comedy than to inject comedy into politics. So yeah, no one's electing anyone because they're hilarious. So I would suggest you become a comedian who is politically oriented rather than a politician who is comedically oriented.
Because oftentimes they don't know they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll never compete with some of those guys. Yeah.
All right.
Hi, my name is William Greenlaw. I'm a student representative here on campus. Mr. Rogen mentioned that a lot of the people who complain that folks are unfairly targeted for their comedy aren't very funny. As established funny people, even many of you have pointed out that you attract jokes because you think they've gone too far. So my question is, how do you know when a joke's gone too far?
When we're on set, we always say, and it's just the truth, that we have to go too far on set in order to make sure that we went far enough, and we can always tone it back. And everyone on the set has to be mature about that. Like, we've had jokes that we've said on set, and we turn around and look at the crew, and they're just like, no. And we're like, gotcha, our bad, moving on, new thing.
But we also test the movies a lot with test audiences, and we really listen. Like, the truth is, people won't laugh a lot if a joke is mean-spirited or they feel morally wrong. You can just feel it in the room. If you say something fucked up, people are just like, they literally
we videotape the audience so we can watch it back, so we can literally see that thing
but you don't
happen
need
that
to.
people do.
We sit in the theater and you could feel the energy get sucked out of the room the second it happens. Like, it is almost a physical sensation.
And there's been times where we love the joke and we think it's hilarious and we think it's morally and intellectually sound, and the audience just doesn't like it.
And we are, again, we don't want to offend people. We don't want to offend most people. I mean, there's some people that no matter what are going to be offended, but again, we have to be able to defend it. And sometimes it takes testing a joke to realize, oh, we might have done something that would be hard to defend just because people are literally saying in the focus group after, like, that joke was fucked up. Don't do that. And we'll be like, okay, we hear that.
But the line is ever changing, and I think it really depends, who you're developing your material for, what that means. What does offend mean? Do you know what I mean? So, like when we talk about something that's offensive, should we not talk about religion? Should we, I think that, should we not talk about abortion? Should we not talk about executing a world leader? Should we not talk about whatever? I mean, there's going to be people who will say that should be off limits for comedy. There's been a big conversation around rape. Should you not ever talk about rape? So I think that there is no line. There is only what you feel in your gut personally that you can't defend, and you don't want to put it out there in the universe. Really, does that sound fair?
That's exactly right. I think like we have to talk about our work a lot, so. That is exactly
it. Would quickly just lead to like, I guess I'm an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh yeah, I don't know why.
Now that you mention it.
And so we put a lot of thought into what can you defend, what can't you defend. We make movies, generally speaking, that are designed to play in a theater full of people, and that is our litmus test: is how does a theater full of people respond to it? And basically. Do they all laugh at it? And afterwards, in the focus group, does anyone point out anything as being, to them, something that's specifically offensive? And obviously, this is the end, essentially, making fun of Christianity. And so some people were like, yeah, this whole movie's offensive. But those people aren't who the movie's for. And it's mostly, you're listening to the people who the movie is for, which is, people who would go pay to see that movie. And if they are put off by something, then they're right. If it doesn't get a laugh, how do you defend that? It means it's not funny. So,
I would also just add that how you feel you want to defend something and how you write things is also super crucial to who is in that room with you. Do you have a diverse writing staff?
Yeah.
What does that mean? All of a sudden, if you actually have a writing staff that is reflective of the world you live in, then everybody does a different kind of check. And that's why I think it's really important to have diverse writing staffs with women and people of color, because then you really do look at what does all this mean. You may all vote and say, you know what? We're all willing to take that same place, but what is your check-in at that point? It's very brave to be in a room full of white people and come up with stuff you think is so awesome and you're being super satirical, and it's like, really? Because a lot of people are super marginalized by that. And will you take that into consideration? And I think those things are important things to think about and talk about when it talks about the creative process.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome.
Seth, Evan, there we are. My name is Branson. I'm a sophomore here at the college. I'm studying film and video production. So my question is, having each of you worked on, throughout your lives, some pretty small to extremely large projects, series, films, I'm curious, how have you been able to preserve what you find to be your own creative and comedic voice in the production of this plethora of media, and where are you willing to compromise?
For us, with movies, I think there's a temptation to, as you get more successful, to try to acquire as much money for your budget as humanly possible. That's kind of it's a sign of success on the surface, at least in Hollywood, is if you make big, expensive movies, that's kind of like the upper echelon. And if you make cheaper, mid-budget movies, you're kind of like the lower echelon. And the kind of unspoken implication is you want to be making bigger, more expensive movies, basically. So when we were getting more successful, that's exactly what we did. We were able to make a $150 million movie, and so we did it. And what we very quickly found was that budget robbed us of everything that made us creatively valuable, basically, and everything that we enjoyed the most about the process itself, which is if we think of a new idea, we can just do it. If someone pitches a joke, they can just do it. And what we learned was that money actually robs you of something very large, which is creative control and freedom. And so in the past...
You could have just said mo money, mo problems.
Mo money, mo problems, man. That's the short answer, is mo money, mo problems. Yeah, basically that's it. We make movies that are that are half the price of the movies we could be making, and we are getting paid half the amount that we could be getting paid. But what we are getting in exchange for that is the ability to pretty much do whatever the fuck we want, which is much more valuable than money on a day-to-day basis.
And we'll cut our own budget down.
Yeah.
On purpose to make sure that stays. Like, and we'll say to them, like, so at 40, you're gonna tell us a lot of stuff. At 30, you're not. We'll do it at 30.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll literally ask them the number that allows us to not have to listen that much.
I could not agree more. I've been in a different situation with these two, in that when we started The Daily Show, cable was still really cheap. I have never worked on anything where there was a budget. I feel like I work on it and leave and then I get a huge budget, like every single time.
Yeah.
But what that means is a small staff also means a lot of ownership. And that's what's really fun, is that when the graphic person sees a presence and you have 6 writers and we're working our balls off, or whatever, I don't have any anymore. We work them all off. But you know, when you work so hard that everybody sees their joke on the air and sees that they're part of the process, it's really rewarding. Because the bottom line in this business is that there's no making it. There's only the path with which you make your work. And if that path isn't fun and rewarding and full of really cool people, then you are going to wake up one day and be a rich person who doesn't have a whole lot of like hanging on to cool experiences. Yeah. It's really, really key. I can't stress it enough.
Yeah. I think as we got older, we realized like most of our lives were spent actually making the movies. Like, and that is the process that like is occupying our day-to-day existence. And so that has to be fun. Mm-hmm. Like it can't all be like, well, it's fucking miserable, but at least it's good in the end. Like, it has to be a process that we enjoy and that is inspiring to us creatively and that makes us feel like we can think of new ideas and get excited about them and put them into the movie without having to call and check a million people and things. And that was like a big revelation where it's for us creatively. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think we have time for one more, so.
Okay. Hi, I'm Scotty. I'm a physician from Canada. So
yeah.
But my question is actually for Liz. Yes. I was wondering.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Hold me.
But how successful has your comedy been at disarming and influencing policy with regards to the lunatics that seem to hate women's sexuality down here?
Well, I mean, we just launched basically in July, so. What has been the great part of the disarming thing is in an issue that is as controversial as abortion rights and reproductive rights, somebody's got to kind of be the fall guy, and I think I've decided that I'm going to be the fall guy in the sense of when someone says to me, "How dare you laugh at killing babies?" I say, "I don't buy your premise. Medical science does not say that's what this is." Or I'll say, "Where are they killing babies? I will come and join you to stop that. It's against the law. That's terrible." To break through the language that has been co-opted by really radical people who don't listen to science and who don't listen to the medicine and of this, they don't know what to do with me because I don't back down. I'm relentless. When they come at me and say, how dare you advocate? They'll say things like this: "How dare you advocate for birth control pills because it's women poisoning themselves with chemicals?" And I'm like, wow, I cannot wait to join you in your trying to get rid of the cigarette industry. When are we starting that? I'll work with you together on that. And then they stare at me blankly. Or they'll say, "Why can't women just shut their legs?" And I'll say, "Why should they?" And so somebody needs to start saying those kinds of things, because otherwise we just go with their narrative when they say things like, you know, sometimes women take birth control pills for endometriosis. I'm like, yeah, well, mostly for fucking. So I'm glad you have your endometriosis problem, but mostly it's because they don't want to get pregnant. So can we please just talk about that in a real way? And so there's other people who are very tactful and awesome and like look super appropriate and say appropriate things. I am not one of them. So I think that it gives people a little bit of a sigh of relief to go, I've been through this experience. 1 in 3 women have had an abortion in their lifetime. That means that 1 in 3 women are holding on to information. Sometimes that's very personal, and they felt relief and they feel guilty about that. So to have comedy and women who, Sarah Silverman has been a great champion with me in working on this project, and Amy Schumer, have come together and just put it out there to say, nothing should define you, especially a medical choice that you made. So that's kind of where we're going, to bring it to a level of, you went to the doctor, you had that thing so that you could go on and be the best person you could be, because that's what we're striving for.
Great.
All right. Okay. Can we take one more question so we don't end on an abortion question?
Come on, I thought that was
Carrie,
great.
can you take one more question? Okay, sweet. Yeah.
No, no.
But there's a joke, which is in Knocked Up, Jonah Hill's character references, he's making suggestions, says something like, I'm not going to say the word, but schmashmortion.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, Seth, if you could give us some background on that joke. What was that decision to literally leave abortion unnamed? And Liz, what do you think about it?
I honestly think that was an improv that came up, and I think the joke itself is commenting, on people's discomfort with it, and how silly it is. Like, Jonah's character in that movie is an idiot, and so he is acting in the way an idiot would act, which is thinking that abortion is something that dare not be named, you know. I think a lot of people forget that in our movies we're portraying morons, and that we ourselves are not that moronic, and I always think it's so funny how, like, we are ascribed the personality traits of the people we're essentially mocking in our work. No one has this problem more than Danny McBride. Like, he made up the character of a redneck idiot because he hates redneck idiots, and now everyone thinks he's a redneck idiot. And I think that happens a lot. I always wonder if people ask Anthony Hopkins if he thinks it's okay to eat people's faces. I doubt they do. But I think that joke, more than anything, was making fun of the type of people that Liz is also making fun of.
Yeah.
And
I also say that in somebody's comedy and art, like, they do what they need to do. If it was obvious child and they didn't mention abortion, that'd be weird. But I think that to me, it's more important that the people who are actually making policy and providing the services and the activists around this issue are saying the word abortion, because they're not legislating a pro-choice, they're legislating an abortion.
Yeah.
So I think, it's creatively, whatever somebody chooses to do, but I think in the practical sense, saying it is a thing we need to start saying, so it's not stigmatized.
Yeah.
And then we did it again.
No, abortion.
Not abortion.
I'm excited for the holidays.
Yeah.
Anybody? I have a really good triple ginger cookie recipe. Anybody? It's amazing.
Oh my God, come get her cookie recipe. So that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank Evan Goldberg, Liz Winstead, Seth Rogen, the JFK Forum, the IOP, and all of you guys for coming out, especially for letting me moderate it. It was awesome. It's been a pleasure. So have a good night.
Thank you.
Woo!